I'm a doctor. My time is more valuable than traffic laws.
Your intelligence got you $5,000 fine and public humiliation. Enjoy.
He walked into the courtroom wearing hospital scrubs and a white coat, stethoscope still hanging around his neck like a badge of authority. When Judge Caprio asked him about the reckless driving citation, he scoffed and said, "Your Honor, I'm a pediatrician. I was rushing to the hospital for an emergency. Surely that takes precedence over a speed limit." But what this respected doctor didn't know was that his emergency would be exposed as a lie. His pattern of using his medical credentials to avoid accountability would unravel, and the judge would discover that his reckless driving had already caused one accident that left a grandmother with permanent injuries. And when the truth came out, that arrogant confidence would crumble completely. Before we show you exactly what happened when medical authority met judicial scrutiny, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. If you love Judge Caprio's wisdom in seeing through false pretenses and protecting innocent people, please support our new channel, Judge Caprio Speaks, by hitting that subscribe button and giving us a like. We're building a community that values truth and accountability, and every subscription helps us share more powerful moments where justice prevails. Your support means the world to us. Providence Municipal Court. Wednesday morning, December 4th, 9:30 a.m. Winter had arrived early, coating the courthouse steps with a thin layer of frost. Inside, Judge Frank Caprio was working through the morning docket when the bailiff called a case that immediately drew attention. Harrison, Dr. Marcus. Citation number 2025-21456. Reckless driving, excessive speed, failure to yield. The courtroom doors opened and in walked Dr. Marcus Harrison, 51 years old, still wearing his hospital scrubs and white coat as though he'd come directly from rounds. Hasbro Children's Hospital logo embroidered on the chest. Stethoscope draped around his neck. Expensive running shoes, the kind orthopedic surgeons recommend for standing all day. Reading glasses perched on his head. Everything about him communicated importance, medical authority, and the implicit message that his time was valuable. Behind him walked his attorney, Patricia Monroe, 40s, from a boutique firm that specialized in professional licensing cases. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the expression of someone who'd defended doctors before and knew the routine. Dr. Harrison approached the podium with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. He set down a hospital pager with a deliberate clunk, as if to remind everyone he might be called away at any moment to save lives. Judge Caprio looked up from his paperwork. His expression was patient, but something in his gaze suggested he'd already read the citation carefully and wasn't impressed. "Good morning, Dr. Harrison. Please state your full name and occupation for the record." "Dr. Marcus James Harrison, pediatric emergency medicine physician at Hasbro Children's Hospital. I've been on staff for 22 years. The credentials were delivered with emphasis, establishing his standing. "Thank you, doctor. You're here regarding a citation for reckless driving. On November 20th at 11:35 a.m., you were stopped on Route 6 traveling 87 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. The officer's report also notes you changed lanes multiple times without signaling, tailgated other vehicles, and nearly caused an accident. Is this accurate?" Dr. Harrison's tone was professionally apologetic, but dismissive. "Your Honor, I was responding to what I believed was a medical emergency. The hospital paged me about a critically ill child. In that situation, speed limits become secondary to saving a life. I'm sure you understand the difficult position that puts me in." Judge Caprio glanced at the citation. "The officer's notes indicate you told him you were late for a meeting. There's no mention of a medical emergency." Dr. Harrison waved his hand. I may have simplified the situation for the officer. Medical details are confidential. I couldn't explain the specifics of the case. But trust me, Your Honor, it was urgent. The gallery stirred. An elderly woman in the front row leaned forward with interest. A man in work clothes shook his head slowly. Judge Caprio's expression remained neutral. Doctor, driving 87 in a 55 zone isn't just speeding. That's 32 miles over the limit. That's reckless. The officer states you nearly sideswiped a vehicle when you changed lanes without signaling. I'm an experienced driver, Your Honor. I had full control of my vehicle. The other driver overreacted. I needed to get to the hospital quickly, and I made judgment calls about safe passing opportunities. His attorney, Patricia, touched his arm gently. Marcus, let me... I've got this, Patricia. The judge is a reasonable man. He understands that doctors sometimes have to make difficult choices. Judge Caprio leaned back slightly. Dr. Harrison, let me clarify something. You're saying you were responding to a medical emergency at 11:35 a.m. on November 20th? That's correct, Your Honor. And this emergency required you to drive recklessly and endanger other motorists? I wouldn't characterize it as endangering. I would say I was expediting my response to a critical situation. Judge Caprio picked up his phone. Bailiff Rodriguez, please contact Hasbro Children's Hospital. I'd like to speak with the administrative office about Dr. Harrison's schedule on November 20th. Dr. Harrison's confident expression flickered slightly. Your Honor, I don't think that's necessary. Medical schedules are... Public employers keep records of when their staff are working. This won't violate any patient confidentiality. Please be patient, Doctor. 20 minutes passed. The courtroom remained full. Dr. Harrison checked his pager twice, adjusted his stethoscope, and whispered urgently with his attorney. Judge Caprio reviewed other cases while waiting. The call connected over the courtroom speaker. A woman's voice filled the room. Hasbro Children's Hospital, Administration. This is Linda Chen. Ms. Chen, this is Judge Frank Caprio from Providence Municipal Court. I'm calling regarding Dr. Marcus Harrison's schedule on November 20th. Can you confirm whether Dr. Harrison was scheduled to work that day? There was a pause. The sound of keyboard clicks. November 20th. Dr. Harrison was scheduled for an evening shift starting at 7 p.m. He wasn't on call during the day. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Dr. Harrison had gone pale. Judge Caprio continued calmly. So, at 11:35 a.m., Dr. Harrison was not scheduled to be at the hospital? That's correct, Your Honor. His shift didn't start until 7 p.m. And do your records show whether he received any emergency pages that morning? More keyboard sounds. I'm checking our communication logs. No, there are no records of any pages sent to Dr. Harrison on November 20th between 11 a.m. and noon. Thank you, Ms. Chen. That's very helpful. The call disconnected. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Dr. Harrison looked like he might be sick. His attorney had her head in her hands. Judge Caprio turned to Dr. Harrison. Doctor, you told me you were responding to a medical emergency. You told the court your speeding was justified because a critically ill child needed you. But according to your own hospital, you weren't working that day, you weren't on call, and you received no emergency pages. Would you like to revise your statement? Dr. Harrison's voice was quieter now. I may have misremembered the details. It was several weeks ago. You misremembered whether you were working? You misremembered receiving an emergency page about a critically ill child? I drive to the hospital frequently, Your Honor. Sometimes for meetings, consultations. I may have confused this particular trip with others. The officer's notes say you told him you were late for a meeting. That sounds like you knew exactly where you were going and why. Silence. Dr. Harrison, were you or were you not responding to a medical emergency on November 20th? The doctor's professional composure was cracking. No, Your Honor. I was going to the hospital for an administrative meeting. Department heads, budget discussions. I was running late. So you lied. You lied to the officer who stopped you. You lied to this court. And you invoked your medical credentials to justify reckless driving that endangered other people. I wouldn't say I lied, Your Honor. I simplified. You lied. Let's be clear about that. And what troubles me more is that you thought being a doctor would excuse that lie. Judge Caprio picked up another document. Dr. Harrison, I've pulled your driving record. In the past 7 years, you've received 9 speeding citations. 9. 6 were for speeds exceeding 20 miles over the limit. And according to this record, you've claimed you were responding to an emergency in 5 of those stops. The gallery reacted with gasps and angry mutters. Dr. Harrison looked at the floor. Were all of those emergencies lies too, Doctor? Some may have been exaggerated. But, Your Honor, you have to understand. When you're a physician, time is always critical. We're conditioned to think that way. Every minute could mean life or death. Except when you're driving to a budget meeting. I misjudged the urgency on that particular day. Judge Caprio's voice remained calm, but carried an edge now. Doctor, there's something else here. In March 2023, you were involved in an accident. You rear-ended another vehicle while traveling approximately 65 miles per hour in a 45 zone. The driver of that vehicle was hospitalized. Can you tell me about that incident? Dr. Harrison's attorney stood up. Your Honor, that accident was settled through insurance. The terms are confidential. I'm not asking about settlement terms, counselor. I'm asking about what happened. Dr. Harrison, do you remember this accident? The doctor's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. The driver you hit was a 68-year-old woman named Dorothy Chen. She was taking her grandson to school. Your vehicle struck hers from behind with enough force to cause 3 cracked vertebrae, a concussion, and permanent nerve damage in her neck. Is that accurate? It was an accident. I didn't see her stopped at the light. Because you were driving too fast to react in time. And according to the police report, you told responding officers you were late for rounds at the hospital. But hospital records showed you weren't scheduled to work that morning either. You were driving to a golf game. The courtroom exploded. People were standing. Someone shouted, "Unbelievable!" The bailiff had to call for order twice. Dr. Harrison looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Caprio waited for silence. Dr. Harrison, I have Dorothy Chen's medical records here. The accident left her with chronic pain. She can no longer pick up her grandson. She takes pain medication daily. She had to retire from her job as a librarian because she can't sit or stand for extended periods. And you settled quickly, quietly, to avoid scrutiny of your pattern of reckless driving. Your Honor, I paid for her medical expenses. The settlement was generous. Money doesn't restore someone's health, Doctor. You should know that better than anyone. Judge Caprio gestured to someone in the gallery. Mrs. Chen is here today. She asked to address the court. An elderly woman stood slowly, using a cane. She walked carefully to the witness area, each step clearly painful. Dr. Harrison couldn't look at her. Dorothy's voice was soft, but clear. Your Honor, 2 years ago, I was driving my grandson Timothy to kindergarten. It was our special time together. Every morning, just him and me. We'd sing songs. He'd tell me about his dreams. She paused, composing herself. I was stopped at a red light on Hope Street. Then I heard tires screeching. The impact. I don't remember much after that. I woke up in the hospital with doctors telling me I had a broken back. Tears were forming in her eyes. Timothy wasn't hurt, thank God. But he was terrified. For months afterward, he'd cry whenever we got in a car. He's 7 now, and he still gets anxious near traffic lights. She looked at Dr. Harrison. The man who hit me was a doctor. I remember thinking, doctors are supposed to help people. But he was driving so fast he couldn't stop. And when his lawyer called to settle, they made me sign papers promising never to talk about it. They paid me money to stay quiet about what happened. Dorothy's voice cracked. But money doesn't give me back my morning time with Timothy. It doesn't let me pick him up when he's scared. It doesn't stop the pain that wakes me up every night. The courtroom was absolutely silent except for Dorothy's quiet crying. Dr. Harrison had tears streaming down his face, but whether they were remorse or self-pity was unclear. Judge Caprio spoke gently. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Please be seated." He turned to Dr. Harrison. "Doctor, you stood before me claiming you were racing to save a child. But the child you should have been thinking about was Dorothy Chen's grandson, terrified in the back seat after you slammed into their car. You invoked your medical oath, your duty to save lives. But you endangered lives because you didn't want to be late for golf. Your Honor, I've learned from that. I've changed." "Have you? You received that citation in November, months ago. Today you walked into my courtroom and lied again. You claimed another emergency that didn't exist. You tried to use your credentials to escape accountability again. That doesn't sound like someone who's learned anything." Judge Caprio picked up his gavel. "Here's what's going to happen. Your speeding fine is $1,000. For the reckless driving, an additional $12,500. Your license is suspended for 1 year." Dr. Harrison gasped. "A year? Your Honor, I need my car to get to work." "You work at a hospital in downtown Providence. There's public transportation. You'll figure it out like everyone else who loses their license. But my patients, your patients will be safer knowing you're not driving recklessly to get to them. And doctor, I'm also referring this case to the Rhode Island Board of Medical Licensure with a recommendation they investigate your pattern of behavior. Using your medical credentials to evade traffic laws raises questions about your judgment and ethics." Dr. Harrison's face went white. "Your Honor, please. My license, my career, I've dedicated my life to helping children." "Then help them by being a responsible adult, by following the same rules everyone else follows, by understanding that your medical degree doesn't make you special when you're behind the wheel of a car." Judge Caprio turned to Dorothy Chen. "Mrs. Chen, I cannot undo what happened to you, but I can ensure Dr. Harrison faces consequences he's avoided for too long. You deserved better than a quick settlement and silence. You deserved accountability." Dorothy nodded, unable to speak through tears. The gavel fell with a sharp crack. "Case closed." Dr. Harrison stood frozen as bailiffs approached. His attorney gathered files silently. The confident physician who'd entered wearing his white coat like armor was leaving in shame. 6 months later, Dr. Marcus Harrison lost his medical license for 6 months following the medical board investigation. The board found he'd exhibited a pattern of poor judgment, dishonesty, and misuse of professional authority. He completed ethics training, anger management, and defensive driving courses. During his suspension, Harrison volunteered at a spinal injury rehabilitation center. He met patients like Dorothy Chen, people living with chronic pain from preventable accidents. Something fundamental shifted in him, not overnight, but gradually. 1 year later, when his license was reinstated, Harrison drove differently, slower, deliberately. He sold his sports car and bought a modest sedan. He never claimed emergencies that didn't exist. He never used his credentials to avoid responsibility. He also did something unusual. He violated the terms of Dorothy Chen's settlement by reaching out to apologize personally. She could have sued, but instead she accepted his apology and his offer to volunteer teaching safety courses for grandparents driving grandchildren. Judge Frank Caprio kept Dorothy Chen's testimony in his files, a reminder that credentials don't excuse cruelty, that healing begins with accountability, that sometimes the most important surgery a doctor can perform is removing their own arrogance. If you love Judge Caprio's commitment to holding professionals accountable and protecting innocent victims, please support Judge Caprio Speaks by subscribing and hitting that like button. Your support helps us share these powerful moments where truth prevails over pretense. What do you think? Should doctors who abuse their authority face professional consequences? Should reckless driving causing injury carry automatic license suspension? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story reminded you that no one is above the law, share it with someone who needs that reminder. Dramatization for storytelling and education, not legal advice or reporting.